Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. Welcome to the show. What a week it's been. Less than a week. Kamala Harris is now top of the ticket, and she is bringing in the money. She has had Zoom calls with hundreds of thousands of people, millions of dollars raised. She has raised over $250 million in just the short time that she has been at the top of the ticket. She's made appearances that have generated enthusiastic audiences. She's cut videos that have already gone viral. She's sewed up the nomination with all of the delegates she needs. She's gotten endorsed by every single prominent Democrat, including President Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle. That just came today. And she seems to have injected new energy, new hope, new vigor into the race. And she has now made this about we're not going back. And I think that is the perfect message. It's not an ideological choice. It's whether we want to go back. And it's not just back to 4 years ago. It's not just back to the 1950s. We're talking about going back to the 19th century with regard to women's rights. We're talking about going back to the 1920s with regard to how the government is going to regulate business. This is a sea change that Donald Trump wants to enact, and she is telling people, you do not have to do this. Choose freedom, choose the future, choose inclusiveness, choose democracy, choose freedom. And I think that message is resonating. I think people were dreading this election. I think many people did not want to have the choice of just two very old men, and now they have a choice between a young, forward-looking Kamala Harris and an old, doddering, angry, confused Donald Trump, who, by the way, is chosen for his vice president, possibly the worst vice presidential pick of all time. I think Sarah Palin is owed an apology because she was nowhere near as bad as this guy. How many people has he offended? Cat owners, single people, women, just about everybody. He's obnoxious, he is cruel, he's mean-spirited, and the statements that keep coming out of his mouth or that keep getting revealed that he's made years ago show him to be exactly the sort of person who is going to offend everyone other than people in the core base of the MAGA movement. And that's exactly what Kamala Harris needs. She needs to loosen up all those people who had forgotten how bad Donald Trump and the MAGA movement had been. She needs to win over suburbanites. She needs to win over women. She needs to win over college-educated women. She needs to win over, frankly, African-American men and Hispanic men who have, I think, drifted off, not necessarily to embrace Donald Trump, but just not very excited by the Democratic Party. And now they have something to be excited about. And we haven't yet gotten the vice presidential nominee. And that person, I think, will generate a new round of excitement, a new round of interest. And I think for the first time, Democrats think they can win this thing. Listen, overconfidence is as bad as depression because it stops you from doing the things you should be doing to win. But I think we have gone from utter despair to hopefulness, to a sense of joy, a sense of fun, a sense of possibility. And that this has happened with only a few days, within a few days, is amazing. I want to relate it to two things. One, in 2019, 2020, I came out with a book called How Women Saved Democracy from Donald Trump. And it was about how in the wake of 2016, women organized. They went out for the Women's March, they formed new groups, they ran for office. And those relationships, those networks that were formed back then are still there. And the muscle memory of organizing and running for a cause greater than oneself is still there. And I think she has tapped into that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to re-energize some of those connections, some of those groups that were formed over 4 years ago now. So it's fortunate that we don't have to reinvent the wheel and that there is a model for this. The other thing that I want to call your attention to, I attended a conference in New York at NYU earlier this week. And I know these things are usually not that interesting. I do a lot of them. I go to a lot of them. But this one was extraordinary. It was the Anti-Autocracy Conference. It brought together academics, brought together historians, elected officials from both sides, pollsters, academics, labor leaders, civil rights leaders. And it really was to discuss the threat that Donald Trump and the MAGA movement posed to our democracy. And it was to alert people, to let them know it is real. This movement has already begun. What is the Supreme Court empowering the president to commit crimes? What is that other than the trappings of an autocratic state? So there are lots of things that have already been done, including the normalization of overthrowing an election, including a party built on conspiratorial lies. But we have a choice, and there are things that we can do to prevent the fall of democracy. And those were discussed as well. And they were also discussed in the context of the things that bring us together. What are the unifying principles? It's things like the rule of law. It's concepts like shared prosperity as opposed to cronyism and trickle-down economics, which benefit only the very, very rich. It's about American leadership in the world, not returning to Fortress America, and even worse, not becoming surrogates and handmaidens for Vladimir Putin and other dictatorial figures around the world. So I think it was reassuring that if you set out these broad principles, there are people, regardless of ideology, who are enthusiastic, who are willing to sign on. And the other thing that happened at this conference, and I see it already in Kamala Harris's campaign, and that is a sense of joy. People were ecstatic, frankly, because the conference occurred just a couple days after the Kamala Harris announcement, or the Joe Biden announcement that allowed Kamala Harris to accede to the top of the ticket. And there was good humor, there was enthusiasm, there was fun. And this is important. Humor is serious business. When you look at pro-democracy movements, fighting authoritarians, fighting the creeping control of the executive branch, of threats to the press, of the end of an independent judiciary, aside from all of the political organizing, aside from the ideology, it's vital to have a sense of social connection, of fun, of esprit de corps. Totalitarians benefit when people become alienated, when they resent one another, whether they hide in their homes, they become despondent, they become disconnected. We already have a problem in this country about loneliness and social isolation. But if you can say to people, it's not only to fight against something, but it's coming together with your neighbors and your friends. This can be fun. This can be a uplifting experience for you. You can get to know your neighbors. You can go to a socially uplifting event. That's an important part of political organizing. And there's a whole body of literature out there that says humor, social connectedness are vital to fighting authoritarianism. And I think back to the books that I've read about the former Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc. The people there were depressed. They were alienated. People didn't make eye contact. It was bleak. People were fearful. People were reticent about making relationships. There was low social trust. All of those things happen when an authoritarian power gets control of a society and spreads this kind of distrust, this kind of suspicion. It prevents people from coming together. So if you have a movement, and I think Harris has really tapped into this, that is joyful, that is fun, that is tied into popular culture, then you already have one leg up on the opposition. Why are these MAGA people always yelling? Why are they always angry? Why are they always resentful? I don't know. Well, I do know, and that is they have become professional victims, which in turn justifies their quest to suppress and repress the rest of us. But it's very important, and I think it's happened organically on social media, in her speeches, that there is a sense of fun in the Kamala Harris campaign and a sense of joy, a sense of possibility. Those things are not quantifiable. You can't look at a message. You can't look at policies. You can't really even measure them in polls. But there is something to that sense of fun. And the last time I think we saw this was with Barack Obama. Now, in those old days, I happened to be a Republican, never a crazy one, but nevertheless a Republican. And Republicans never got it. They never understood hope and change. They thought it was kind of goofy. They thought it was superficial, but it wasn't. It was about how you fuse people with different backgrounds, different policies, different outlooks into a movement to become activists. And that spirit, I think, has been rekindled. At least I hope it has. So what are the tasks ahead? First, Kamala Harris has to choose a vice president, and we've previously gone through some of the names. I don't think there's a bad one in the lot, quite frankly. A lot of this is just going to come down to personal connection, a sense of shared past, and I think the ability to kind of amplify this forward-looking, optimistic message. She is going to be able to choose someone within her age bracket, and that I think is going to emphasize the difference between her and the elderly, feeble Donald Trump. What else is going to happen? Well, I think she is going to get out on the airwaves. She is going to begin to come up with the messages, both small, like we're not going back, and in more detail. I think she can present herself as the prosecutor against the predator. And I think she has also the opportunity to launch some bigger ideas. President Biden has talked about court reform, but he hasn't really come out with anything. I think she should own that issue. The courts are off the rails. The Supreme Court has become a tyrannical partisan body that does not respect precedent, that does not follow the rule of law. So let her take them on. Let her propose very bold court reform. I also think this is exactly the right moment to offer national service, not mandatory, but a positive incentive to be part of your communities, to help those less fortunate, to travel around the country. You can tie it to debt forgiveness for college students. You can tie it to whatever other incentives you want to give. But I think people are ready. People are ready to take up the opportunity and the challenge to do something positive for America. And she could certainly capitalize on that. That was kind of the spirit that John Kennedy tapped into when he began the Peace Corps and other youthful movements that sought to give of oneself. So I think that's another way that she can go. And she can certainly expand on the economic prosperity. We just got great news again today that inflation's down to 2.5% annualized, that our growth was unexpectedly high in the second quarter. Job creation continues to be strong. So I think she can now turn to the American people and say, we're on the right track. We've got the right idea. The right idea is not to give billionaires tax breaks. It's to invest in workers, in the American people, in things like infrastructure, green energy, and we can continue to do that. And we should, I think, be clear that although the Republicans talk about handouts, like energy subsidies aren't handouts, that what Democrats are doing is empowering people to work. What's the point of Head Start? It's to allow not only these children to get enrichment, but mothers, parents to get out in the workforce so that they can earn a living. So I think there's plenty that Kamala Harris can do on a policy basis. But I think, there's a lot of people offering her advice these days. There are a lot of people who say, oh, she was a weak candidate. Oh, she wasn't the best choice. Oh, they should have had an open convention. Hooey. Feh on that. She is doing exactly what she needs to. She's remarkably ruthless and efficient. It's about time we had someone like that at the top of the ticket for Democrats, for independents, for pro-democracy forces. So in that spirit, you should volunteer for the campaign or another campaign. You should consider running for a local office. You should certainly contribute if you are able. And you should draw other people into the race as well. Do you want to be with the fun team, the forward-looking team, the optimistic team, or do you want to be with those grouchy old men who want to drag us back decades, if not centuries. That's the choice. And for the first time, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the chances. So thank you for being with me again. Remember, if you like the program, tell your friends that they can click right there. They can listen, follow us on Apple, on YouTube, on Spotify. But also let me know what you're thinking. Send in a message. Tell me what you're doing to volunteer for the 2024 campaign. Tell me how you are reaching out to neighbors who suddenly might be interested in a candidate that's not 70 or 80 years old. Tell me what the vibe is that you are getting from neighbors and friends. That's how people come together, they get inspired, and they go on to win elections. And after all, that's the challenge, to win an election for democracy. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.